It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso on S3. Well, we are asking you the following questions. Are you struggling to get enough sleep? Your cell phone might be the culprit. Now, recent research from the Frontiers Public Health suggests a link between excessive cell phone use and insomnia. Now, we are joined by Dr. Manoush Bangwadeen, a general practitioner, to answer all of those questions that we have. Doctor, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me again.
I feel like a good starting point would be, what is considered excessive use of your cell phone?
It's become such a habit for us nowadays. You know, you go to bed after a long day, you're on your phone, look at the socials.
It's literally become an extension of ourselves. You know, the last 40 years, the cell phone has absolutely revolutionized the way we live, interact, and you know, our lifestyles. The question you ask is quite a loaded one. At this stage, there unfortunately is no absolute consensus with regards to time or duration of cellular phone exposure. In other words, what constitutes excessive usage thereof. How we're now looking at it, and it's now actually been classified almost as a psychological condition, it's what the exposure or the duration of exposure is doing to your life and lifestyle. Is it having a negative impact? And we are seeing it more from a psychological, almost an addictive condition. So if, and it's regardless of the amount of exposure you have to your cell phone, if that exposure is starting to have a negative impact on your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, etc., it's then considered excessive, and you know, we approach it from that perspective.
And look, we want to know what have you learned over the past while, because we've all experienced it. You know, if you go to bed and you start reading a book, you get tired and you go fall asleep. But it doesn't matter how tired you are, if you get in bed and you start scrolling through the socials, you end up being there for hours.
Absolutely.
So what's that association between that excessive cell phone use or cell phone use in general and poor sleep? What have we learned?
So it's basically a multifactorial issue, right? The first has got to do with the content that you're consuming. You've got to realize most of us spend time on social media and these sort of platforms. And we know that especially in the younger generation, the more time you spend on social media, etc., the more anxiety it tends to invoke, the more paranoia it tends to evoke, this whole FOMO feeling. It's actually now classified as a medical condition. So this is what you're exposed to, this is what it incites in you. It increases your sense of arousal and anxiety, etc., to the point where it almost becomes a pathological thing. So you now can't fall asleep based on that. The second, and probably also just as important aspect, is what we call the blue light exposure. All devices that have a screen, cellular phones especially, tend to emit a specific frequency of light. We call this blue light. And this light naturally leads to an aroused state in us. It keeps us awake. And it's the light we have during the day. It's a light that keeps us awake. But unfortunately, in the evening, when we need to start to fall asleep, we need to turn the blue light off so that a specific hormone called melatonin is then released from our brain, which then leads us into a sleep and hopefully a good state of sleep. So this is where the issue with the insomnia, sleep patterns, etc., comes in with regards to especially our cellular phone usage.
Okay. Well, Doc, is it as simple as just on my phone reducing the blue light and putting the sleep mode on, which is more of a warmer tone, that orangey yellow color? Will that not disrupt my sleep as well? You know, if I'm going to go to bed and I remove the blue tone?
You know, it's one thing to put the blue light filter off and like, now I'm fine now. But you mentioned that it's about the type of content you consume as well.
And like I said, it's a multifactorial thing. You know, so the blue light filters are not going to totally cut off that blue light. You're still going to have a certain amount of exposure to the specific light frequency. Then there's also the stimulatory effect of what it is that you're consuming. And as long as your adrenaline's high, your cortisol levels are high, and your melatonin levels low, you know, unfortunately, you're not going to fall asleep as easily as you normally would. And secondly, and more importantly, you're not going to get as good a quality sleep as you actually should. And we know that sleep is you know, it's the therapeutic part of our day. If you don't have good sleep, we age faster, we tend to become more prone to illnesses, etc., etc. So sleep is a vital component of our day.
Exactly, because you want to be relaxed and calm when you go to bed, because by consuming social media and being on your phone, your mind is spinning, right?
Yep.
Is there a cutoff time that you can suggest that we need to turn our phones off and put it down?
fortunately on that, there is quite wide agreement. So, and it's got to do with age. You'll find the younger your brain is, the more susceptible you are to all of these effects that we've discussed. So, my strong recommendation to my patients and family, etc., is 3 to 4 hours, depending on your age. If you're a teenager or younger, 3 to 4 hours before you know you're going to get into bed, stop using any and all screens. It doesn't matter whether it's a cell phone, a television screen, a TV
3 to 4
monitor.
hours.
3 to 4 hours if you're younger. Older folk, above 20, 30, 2 to 3 hours, at least 2 hours.
At least 2
Right?
hours.
Because that's the time it takes for our brains to reset itself, get into that anticipated sleep cycle, etc., and then fall asleep effectively.
And look, I must be honest, that's quite scary if you think about 2 to 3 hours, because
Yes.
we got so used to a way of living,
Yeah.
with our phones being so close by. I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's a challenge, it's a big idea to think like, well,
Yeah.
2 to 3 hours before I go to bed, I can't look at my phone.
Yep. I mean, I'll stick my hand up right there. There was a time where I would literally switch my phone off and hop into bed. And I felt the physical effects thereof, the insomnia, getting up in the morning a little more groggy, a little more miserable, etc. And the last year or so, I've started to, practice what I preach. And I cannot explain to you the effect it's had on my lifestyle, my mental well-being, etc. All I say to you is just try it. Try it for a week or two, and you will experience it yourself.
I can imagine. I can definitely imagine that. Now, doctor, is there any way we can find some middle ground? Is there any way we can still use our phone but reduce some of the negative side effects? Is there a way we can find the best of both worlds?
Well, there absolutely has to be, not so. I mean, this device is an integral part of our life. We're not going to discard it. So a lot's got to do with self-realization. There's apps on your phone that will tell you accurately how much of time you spent on your phone, etc., etc. And also be cognizant of the effects it's having on your life and lifestyle, the people around you. Is it affecting your relationships? Is it affecting your work performance, etc., etc.? If you find it's getting there and if it's pointed out to you, you need to take those steps to curtail this, obviously. Having said that, get into the habit of limiting your exposure before going to bed. Don't leave your phone active right next to your bed and then be tempted to jump up if there's a message that comes through or if the light goes off, The other thing is also lifestyle changes. We've got to realize we've got to move away from the sedentary life of sitting in front of a device, whether it's a cell phone, a television, etc., because there are consequences to that. The lack of mobility, not being exposed to the physical environment, not actually interacting with each other directly. I mean, we know giving somebody a hug, the physical effects and the beneficial effects it has on it. And how many of us actually now do it simply because we're stuck in front of some device or the other. So, it really has got to be a review of your life and lifestyle. What is this device doing in that? Is it a more beneficial tool? Is it becoming a negative aspect of my life? And it's up to you to initiate those
I think
changes.
it's important just to take a step back and just quickly
Absolutely.
look at your life. Dr.
Absolutely.
Manoj, thank you very much. We're going to chat to you in just a little bit. Very interesting indeed. But if you have any comments or maybe advice, you can let us know on our social media as well. What do you do? Do you have a nighttime or pre-bedtime ritual with regards to your phone?
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You are tuned into your Feel Good Breakfast Show Expresso right here on S3. We are continuing our discussion with Dr. Manoj this morning about cell phone use before bed. Yes, something that I think we are all very guilty of because it's become kind of a norm, Dr. Manoj. But I want to start unpacking insomnia a little bit. So first and foremost, insomnia. How would we unpack it and how does cell phone or cell phone use before bed play into that scenario?
All right, so insomnia is basically the inability to fall asleep and to attain deep quality sleep and on a repeated basis. It's a widespread phenomenon across the world, and there's many aspects that contribute to it, not just cellular phone exposure, obviously. When we're talking cellular phone exposure, it relates to everything we've mentioned so far. The most important part being the content that we're consuming, the anxiety that it tends to provoke, especially in the hours before we fall asleep during the day, etc., etc. And we know that certain individuals are particularly prone to that. So if you have a tendency to already be anxious, paranoid, etc., excessive cellular phone usage or exposure is actually going to either bring this to the fore or enhance this, these negative features of you. Then there's also the light exposure. We at a level of existence where just about everything depends on a screen of some sort.
Pretty
if it's
much.
not the screen in your car, it's your cellular phone, a TV monitor, laptop, or a tablet of some sort. And in an attempt to make the screens more clear, etc., more vivid, there's a lot more light intensity involved, obviously. So that has also increased. So our overall exposure to blue light sources has increased quite dramatically. And this has this negative knock-on effect in inhibiting melatonin release to the point where in some people, melatonin's, it's almost becomes almost impossible to secrete because your brain's so suppressed for such prolonged periods, people actually cannot fall asleep without medication, etc., etc. So it is becoming quite a significant thing, and it's something that needs to obviously have, to be seen in that light.
And it's interesting you mention all of these facts because I think a lot of people know, the effects thereof, but they don't really take it on board in terms of long term.
Absolutely.
And it's not just cell phones we are talking about. It's screens in general before bedtime because I think we're all guilty of that. You're in bed and if you have a TV in your room, you're watching your favorite series, you become so tired up until a point where you're with one eye open trying to see what is still happening there before you fall asleep. So screens in general, I mean, this is the case. Yes, cell phones, but in general, any screen.
Yes. I mean, they're all going to have the same effect regardless of the format of the screen.
Lifestyle tips from your side in terms of reducing screen time before bedtime, because we mentioned when you go sleep, this is when your body takes that time to recover properly. You mentioned something that I picked up on earlier as well in terms of, aging.
Yes.
You slow your aging the more you sleep.
Absolutely. So, from a physiological perspective, we know the benefits of good sleep. Not just sleep, but good sleep. And if you're serious about your overall health, well-being, etc., and one of the ironies is, if you're on social media, every second feed is something to do with lifestyle in a positive way, etc. And
counterproductive.
how many of us actually take heed of that?
Yeah.
So with regards to counteracting the effects of the exposure to screen cellular phones in particular, my strong suggestion would be do a lifestyle audit. You've got to move. Mobility is a vital part of our existence. It's a huge anti-aging benefit. So make sure you're physically active. Make sure you're out there. Make sure you're out in the environment. Just being in sunlight has an antidepressant effect.
Yeah.
Did you know that? I mean, so just sunlight exposure increases your vitamin D, etc. Being in a beautiful natural environment elevates your mood, etc. Make sure you are still physically interacting with those around you, not just through an interface. Be physically active. Go to the gym. The endorphins that are released during any form of exercise. And I'm not saying go and become a gym bunny, but some sort of physical activity.
Go for a walk.
Concentrate on your diet. So many of us will sit in front of the TV, in front of a cellular phone, and munch down a packet of chips.
Especially after a long, stressful day, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not doing yourself any favors in that, especially with regards to health and well-being. And anti-aging is becoming a massive thing around the world. We want to live longer, healthier, more productive.
And the problem is, if you don't make the changes now, you will only see those effects years on when it's too late.
And this is the unfortunate thing. Humanity is such where, we could be told certain things, and unless we experience it, it's almost like touching the hot plate, We've got to learn in that way. And I'm saying to you, don't make that mistake. All the evidence is there. We know the effects of insomnia, of a poor lifestyle, etc. It's up to you to initiate the preventative measures now, and one of them is restricting cellular phone usage.
Yeah, don't wait till it's too late.
No.
Dr. Minaj, thank you, man. That was very, very interesting.
It's been
indeed.
a pleasure again.
I really do hope that you took some golden nuggets out of this conversation and maybe look at your phone a little bit differently in your lifestyle in general. Look after yourselves.